How to do the bearing replacement on a Cabrio or other similar Whirlpool top-load washer. I did this same repair about 5 or 6 years ago. At that time, the only way you could do it was by replacing the entire tub, which had the bearings pre-installed. Now they actually have a bearing kit, so I'm hoping it's going to be a little easier this time, but it's going to be actually a little bit more complicated too. There are other videos on the internet showing this, but this one might be more helpful because the tool that I rented might be different, a little bit different from some of the other tools you've seen. So first of all, the kit that you normally get when you order this, you get the 2 tub bearings, you get a seal, you get a lock nut, a lock washer, the shaft, sleeve for the shaft, you get high temperature adhesive for the seal, and you get grease for the bearings. This is a tool that I rented from a company online. They mailed it to me, and then I'll mail it back when I'm done. I'll show you how you use this tool during the installation. Step before doing this work is making sure the washer's off. Unplug it from the wall, make sure it's off. Don't just trust flipping a breaker. Remove the plug yourself. See that it doesn't power on, and you know the power's off. In addition to having bearings bad enough that they failed twice over the life of this washer, one of the other hallmarks of this washer is it's incredibly hard to open. They show you on some videos just sticking a putty knife right here and opening this, and I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to show it to you because it's 10 times harder than it looks. The videos you see, they'll do it in 10 seconds. Yeah, plan on 15-20 minutes trying to get the top of the washer open. You really need to get down there and eyeball it, and the more you open it, the worse it gets every time. With the other videos on the internet showing you popping the lid of this washer open in 5 seconds, it's not likely to go down like that. One of the things I use, they say a putty knife, but you really need something that's a little stiffer, like a really stiff putty knife. I use the edge of this tool, the non-sharp edge of it, because it's stiff and not bendy. A bendy putty knife's never going to work. You also might want to take a screwdriver, cover the end with some painter's tape so you don't mar the finish, which I have previously in a few opening attempts, and then use the rest of painter's tape to secure the lid on there. Once you do that, you can actually, and I may have to move this out a little bit, you can actually lift the lid and you can see where we're going to be working. So we're going to be taking this white washer ring off the top, and we'll be getting down in there to the tub. Taking that out, we'll be lifting the metal tub basket out too. It's open. You're going to see that, contrary to what I told you before, the painter's tape is not going to hold that lid. I threw some duct tape on there, and I'll have to get the sticky off later. Here are the hinges that you have to squeeze with a putty knife to open the lid, and you can see like some little flimsy putty knife, yeah, it is not going to compress that enough. So the next step, we're going to disconnect this hose right here by squeezing this clamp and pulling it off. We're going to remove this wash ring from the top of the wash bucket. Okay, at this point we've got the ring off. If you didn't figure it out, there's little plastic clips all the way around it that lift it off. The next step will be to pop out this center hub. You can see there's a spot for a screwdriver there. Take that off. Next, we're going to remove this bolt. Once we remove this bolt, this wash plate will come off the bottom, and the metal tub will lift out of the larger plastic bucket that it's in. So when I replaced these bearings the first time, you had to buy a whole plastic bucket. It was quite fun replacing all of these springs and getting it back in. Okay, so now with the wash plate removed, you can see the shaft and the bearings are down in there. That's where the action is. That's what's causing this thing to sound like a 747 getting ready to take off in my basement. By the way, I was mentioning the springs a moment ago. I've replaced those before too, and they're right here. If your washer's getting out of balance all the time, things like that, that's usually what they are. Once you can get the lid open like we just did, it's a pretty easy repair because you just you lift these rods up, it pops over, you take it out and you put a new one in. It takes a little bit of muscle, but not very hard. Next, what we're going to be able to do now that that's all out, we're going to be able to lift the barrel, lift the wash tub out from the inside. So that's what we'll be doing next. So it took a little bit of work, but the basket is now out of my tub. I had to actually spray some PB Blaster in there to get it to loosen up on this center shaft and slide off. You see all that goo down there in the bottom? That's should probably be all grease from the bearing seals. I noticed the first time I had this happen, it was actually spewing black stuff onto the bottom side of the washer on the floor underneath the stator motor. Yeah, probably my wife wonders why the laundry's not getting as clean as it was. That might be part of the reason. Let me take a minute and show you the wash tub. So this is the wash tub sitting upside down. Took it out, but you can hear water in there. That's probably not good, and I don't think that happened the first time. So I think I'm gonna try to see if I can figure out where it's getting in and seal it up. I mean, I could buy a new wash tub, but at this point I'm in the middle of this repair and I really don't want to do that. If worse comes to worse, I'll put a hole in this sucker, drain the water out and seal the hole up if I can't figure out where the water's coming in. But I'll look for cracks in the plastic, see if I can seal them with some aqua seal or something. Googling it. Apparently maybe this fluid is normal. It may not be water in there. It has to do with balance when it's spinning. So I'm not going to worry about it. Part is some of the hardest part. We're going to be getting everything out. And we're going to be needing access at various times to the top, inside of the basket, and the bottom of the washer. And so you need to find some way to tilt it back. What I'm going to try to do in this case today, I know from previous experience it doesn't take a lot of room to get the stuff off you need on the bottom, but I'm going to actually try to tilt this at a 45-degree angle and kind of put it against the wall if that works, and I can get in the top and bottom at the same time. I'll have to be really careful it doesn't move on me, but that may actually be easier than laying it completely on its back on the hoses, which is what they say to do. The problem is in my setup that's not going to give me a lot of room to work, just the way my laundry room. Not a lot of extra room in here. You know, maybe I should have pulled this whole thing out into my garage, but didn't have someone to help me move it. Balance now where I can get in the top of my washer from there. I can get in the bottom from under here. And the bottom under here is where we're going to be doing the next part of the work. So we're going to be taking, I think it's a 1/4-inch hex, taking this out. Then this whole plate, which is really just a weight, is going to come off. And then we're going to take the bolts off, and we're going to actually remove the stator motor underneath. As you can see, we have that counterweight removed now. Now we can see the stator motor under here. We're going to remove these 4 bolts here. I got to see what size they are. The one in the top I told you about was a 7/16. I think these are 5/16, and of course I can't find my 5/16 socket, so I'll figure that out. Once we get this stator motor pulled off, we're gonna need to disconnect this right here. That's where the motor power and the speed sensor connect, and it just clips off. And then we're gonna bring that whole thing down, and once we get to that point, now we're ready to start working on the bearings. Okay, so at this point we've got that retention ring ready to go ahead and release this stator motor here. I'm gonna put the camera down for a second while I do that. Okay, we've got it off now, detached. And if you look at it here, this is where I'm gonna unclip this plastic thing. I've got to see where it unclips again up on the side, but we'll unclip that and take that off. And then we can move this whole thing out of the way. I don't want to fuss with getting that plastic clip off and risking breaking it since it's older plastic. But so next thing is to get this lock nut off of this shaft. So we'll use a wrench and a pair of pliers or vice grips if we need to get that off. Okay, so you can see we've got that lock nut off. So this is the part you've probably been waiting for, at least I have, which is knocking that drive seal out with a hammer. It's hard to maneuver with a hammer. Not hit the side of the dryer. There we go. And she's gone. If you see all this grease on the underside of the tub, that's a clue that your bearings really were shot, because that's where all that grease came from, inside the bearings. Also, when I took some of this out, I saw some water come out. So that gives me a pretty good clue that what had happened to these bearings is probably the seal to the washer tub had failed over time. Water had gotten in there over time and affected the amount of grease and lubrication, and then they heated up, and then it's a downhill spiral from there. Inside the tub, I can take and I can pull and remove that shaft. Also, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, this whole job may have just paid for itself, because I believe that I have found 75 cents in the bottom of the washer. When Some of the bearings came out when I pulled the shaft out. It looked to me like it was the top bearing, but I'm gonna put this, if I can reach it, put this shaft in here and pound it with the hammer, and we're gonna knock the bottom bearing out. See how that goes. So I was able to use this tool to knock the bottom bearing out. It looked like the top bearing actually came out when I pulled the shaft out, but put this down through the hole, and essentially you put this, you're going to catch the lip of the bearing. You'll be able to feel it with your finger from the bottom. Put the end of this against the lip of that bearing and pound on it. It'll pop loose. If the top one didn't come out with the seal, you just do the same thing, putting this tool in from the bottom of the washer and coming up, catching the lip of the top seal and pounding it out. And when you basically, yeah, that's what popped out, that and the washer ring. Knocked them out of here. Like I said, if you need to take the top one out, you put this in here, try to catch the lip of the top one and pound it out. Now we're gonna clean all this up, clean the top, clean all this up with rags and everything, some PV Blaster, and make it all nice and clean, and we'll get ready to put the new stuff in. That wasn't the top bearing that came out when I pulled out the shaft. That was just the seal. So I'm going to need to pound, like I said, look up there, we're going to catch just the lip of that bearing up there, and we're going to pound that sucker out. Voila, we knocked it out. Out here. So there it is. Prior to installing this, let's just review how this is all going to go together. This is the new shaft. See, the top half of the shaft has a little bit longer grooved section. The bottom half a little smaller, and it's also got threads for this lock nut that's going to go on it. So essentially the way it's going to go in, depending on the tool you have, sometimes you put this bearing on and then on the shaft and then install the shaft. And sometimes the tool I have, I'm going to install the bearings first and then insert the shaft into the washer. But essentially the way it's going to go together is, you know, this is going to go on, and then this is going to go down in the tub like that, and then from the bottom of the washer we're going to put this on, then we're going to put this washer on, and then the bottom bearing, and then this lock nut, and that's all going to go on there, of course, and we pull it together tighter. And then the last thing that will go on from the tub side will be this seal. Now I've got this top washer in the grease. I'm going to put grease around the outside where my thumb is of this, and then I'm going to press this into that hole right there. Okay, now this is the tool that I have. This is the top bearing press. I've got all the bottom pieces removed. I'm going to insert this down in. We're going to squeeze that from the bottom. That's going to pop that bearing into place. I wasn't really clear on what this piece of the tool was at first, but it's a locking bar. We're going to basically spin this on here and keep it from, as things turn, it's gonna keep the thing from spinning endlessly. It's going to catch in there. So we're going to get that threaded on and into place before we, or actually I guess we have to put the other pieces on first, which is essentially we've got to put this sleeve in. Hopefully that'll stay. And we've got to slide the bottom bearing on there. And we're going to put some grease on that in a second. Actually, before that bottom bearing, we're going to put the washer first, then the bottom bearing, and we'll put some grease on that first. We've got the bottom spacer tube in there, the washer, and the bearing. What we're going to do is put this bearing press on, and then it has a spacer, a thrust nut that's going to go on. And then the actual nut. And so this goes on like that. And then I think this is where this locking bar comes into place so it doesn't spin endlessly. Now as I tighten this with the wrench, it's pulling the bearings into place. Okay, now that we've got that all tightened, we're gonna back it off now. And we're done. That bottom bearing just got 1/8 to 3/16, so it's not gonna be completely flush here at the bottom. So let me go ahead and get that removed. So when I was done, I reached up with my finger and that washer didn't feel like it was really in exactly the right position, so I'm gonna do this one more time just to make sure it's right. Install the new drive shaft. Remember the part with the threads right there, that goes down. So I'm gonna just insert this in. Might need to tap it with a hammer. In fact, I think we will. This sleeve should be basically flush on top of that top bearing. Okay, so you can see it popped through down here. So only trick now is to reinstall this shaft nut. You notice the shaft nut, one side's flatter than the other. It's like a rounded side and a flatter side. The flatter side is what you want to go on first on the drive shaft. And funny, because there are bearings on this now, it's gonna want to turn on you. So you're gonna need to grab it with vice grips or something here and turn it. That's what I'll do to tighten it up. Okay, now that we've got that tightened on there, we're gonna reinstall the stator there. I'll put that shield on first, and then the stator, and then the counterweight, and then the bolts with the plate. Reattach all that. Stator is back on there now, the counterweight is on and bolted in. Now we're ready to put the washer back down on all 4 feet. Okay, now for the last step, we're going to install the rubber seal. Now, need to make sure on this seal that this is the top, that we get grease on the inside here and actually in this cavity here as well. And then we're going to put adhesive, so grease on one side, adhesive on the other. On the bottom part, that's going to go in first, and on the outside is going to be adhesive. I'm going to get that all ready to go and then push it into the hole. Then we're going to use a tool to seal it down. Okay, so now we've got that seal in there with the adhesive on the outside, grease on the inside, sleeve in the bottom, and we're essentially just going to put this little tool over it, which is really just a piece of PVC pipe, and we're going to wonk on it with a hammer a little bit, seal it in there. This hammer is just a little too large to swing in this tub. So that looks like it did it pretty darn good. Take this out, wipe the excess off. And now we should be able to reinstall the basket and everything. Okay, so we've got the basket slid back in now after everything. Basically put this on. And we'll bolt that back down. This is 7/16. So now I've got the cap in down there. So now I just need to snap this back in here. Remember to hook this hose up to this here. And we'll do that in a minute. And close it all up, and then we'll put it through the test cycle and see how it does. So now the last thing left is to put it through test mode. So the way you can do that on this washer is press any button, except you can't do this with the power button, the start or the stop. You're going to press it for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Let it go. 1, 2, 3. Press it. 1, 2, 3. Let it go. 1, 2, 3. Press it. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going through test mode. So you see it says C0 on the display. Hey, must have hooked the motor up right. And we'll see if it sounds like a 747 anymore.